The day he walked into her office asking for a job, he had no idea the woman behind the desk was the same one he had once left standing outside a graduation hall with their little boy holding her hand. Years earlier, he had told her she was too small for the life he wanted. Too ordinary, too far beneath where he believed he was headed. Now he sat in a dark suit with careful answers and tired eyes, while she turned over his resume in silence and decided whether he still deserved to be taken seriously. Long before any of that, before the office and the glass walls and the title on the door, there was a young woman named Claire Bennett working double shifts in a textile warehouse outside a town called Red Hollow, Ohio. Red Hollow was the kind of place where most people inherited their future before they were old enough to choose one. The same streets, the same families, the same conversations on porches at dusk. Some people found comfort in that. Claire only ever found limits. Her mother died when she was 14. Her father stayed alive, but only in the technical sense. He worked, he slept, he sat in the kitchen with the television on, and never really looked at anyone. Claire learned early how to move through life without expecting much help. By 20, she had already mastered the art of doing what had to be done while pretending she wasn't tired. That was when she met Lucas Halle. He worked loading freight at a distribution center across town. He was 24. Broad smile, easy voice. The kind of man who seemed to know how to make hard days feel lighter just by standing near you. He came into the warehouse office one afternoon looking for paperwork that had been misfiled, and Claire found herself smiling at a stranger before she meant to. He was attentive in small ways. He remembered details. He brought coffee on cold mornings. He listened when she talked, and for someone who had spent years feeling overlooked, being listened to felt dangerous and wonderful at the same time. They married fast by some standards, slowly by theirs. The courthouse ceremony, cheap rings, a second-hand table in a one-bedroom apartment above a hardware store. 2 years later, their son Mason was born, and for a while, their little life held together with the kind of quiet tenderness that doesn't look impressive from the outside but feels like enough when you're inside it. Neither of them had gone to college. Both worked hard. Claire picked up extra warehouse hours and cleaned 2 offices downtown on weekends. Lucas handled long shifts and odd jobs, always saying one day they'd get ahead. One day things would stop feeling so tight. Then one rainy October evening, Claire found a flyer pinned to a bulletin board outside the public library. A local business college in Ashbury was offering a night program in financial systems and bookkeeping. Tuition assistance, evening classes. Career placement. She brought the flyer home folded in half and laid it on the table. "You should do this," she said. Lucas barely looked at it. "With what money? We'll figure it out. We have rent, we have Mason. We have groceries." Claire sat down across from him. "Then I'll work more. You study now. You get the better job first. Then later, when we can breathe, I'll study too." Lucas stared at her for a long time. "And what do you get while I do all that?" Claire gave him a tired little smile. "The same thing I always get. More to do." He laughed, but not because it was funny. A week later, he enrolled. That decision changed the shape of Claire's entire life. She added a breakfast shift at a diner before the warehouse. She cleaned houses on Saturdays. She learned how to stretch leftovers into another dinner and how to hide worry from a child who still thought adults controlled everything. She got Mason dressed, dropped him off, worked, came home, cooked, cleaned, put the boy to bed, and waited for Lucas to get back from class. Some nights he came in frustrated and embarrassed, tired of formulas and software and classmates who seemed to understand faster than he did. Claire would make him tea, sit beside him, and go over notes she barely understood herself. "Just keep going," she would tell him. "You're closer than you think." If Claire's sacrifice already says something to you about the kind of woman she was, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Do you think you could carry that much for someone you love? For the first year, Lucas was grateful. The second year, he grew restless. By the third, something in him had shifted. At first, it was subtle. Later nights, new cologne, more talk about classmates, and less talk about home. He started buying better shirts, saying appearances mattered where he was headed. Claire noticed, but she had already invested too much faith to pull it back. Easily, doubt felt like betrayal, and she had spent years believing loyalty meant staying quiet. Then one name began coming up too often. Alyssa. Elisa Ford was in several of his classes. Her father owned 2 accounting firms in Ashbury. She knew the right people, the right language, the right kind of confidence. Lucas said she was helping him understand the harder material. Claire nodded and kept washing dishes and told herself not to become suspicious just because she was tired. The truth arrived through someone else, the way it often does. A woman from the diner mentioned seeing Lucas at a restaurant in Ashbury, looking cozy with a blonde and a red coat. Claire smiled as if it meant nothing, carried coffee to another table, and felt something inside her go still. She said nothing that night. She waited. The graduation ceremony took place in June at the Ashbury Business College auditorium. Claire wore a navy dress she had altered twice to make it fit better. Mason, then 7, wore a tiny tie and asked every 10 minutes when his dad would walk across the stage. Soon, she kept saying. They got there early. Claire brought a cheap camera because she had imagined this day too many times not to preserve it. She had paid for nearly all of it with overtime, sore feet, and skipped sleep. However, it turned out it had cost her something real. Then Lucas came in through the side aisle with Alyssa beside him, laughing at something he had just whispered. Not behind him. Not near him by accident. With him. Claire saw it before her mind could protect her from it. The way he leaned in. The way Alyssa touched his arm. The way his face looked open and alive in a way Claire had not seen in months. Mason tugged at her hand. That's Dad. Yes, Claire said, though the word hurt on the way out. That's Dad. Lucas saw them. For 1 second their eyes met. Then he looked away. Claire stayed through the ceremony. She clapped because Mason clapped. She watched Lucas take his certificate and smile for photographs. Watched him step into the future she had helped build, and felt something inside her begin to close. Afterward, in the crowd outside, he caught up with her by the side steps. Claire. Wait. She turned. Mason stood pressed against her leg. We need to talk, Lucas said. The world around them was full of happy noise families hugging, people posing for pictures, flowers, laughter, engines starting in the parking lot. It made what he said next feel even crueler. This isn't working anymore. Claire stared at him. What? What isn't? He exhaled, already irritated by the conversation he had clearly rehearsed. Us? I've changed. I want something different now. Mason looked from one to the other, confused. Lucas lowered his voice. Alyssa understands the world. I am a moving into. She gets my goals. Her family has connections. I can't keep pretending those things don't matter. Claire felt the air change around her. And what am I? She asked. Lucas hesitated only a second. You're a good person, he said. But you still clean houses and work warehouse shifts. I can't stay tied to that life. 3 years. 3 years of supporting him. 3 years of coffee at midnight. Bills, childcare, and faith. You waited until today to say this? She asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't want to hurt you. It was such a weak sentence that it almost made her laugh. Mason pulled on her sleeve. Are we all going home? Claire crouched and fixed his collar with shaking fingers. No, baby, she said softly. Not all of us. She walked away before Lucas could say anything else. She and Mason wandered through downtown Ashbury for almost an hour because she did not know where else to go. She had enough pride to keep moving and not enough direction to know toward what. At some point they crossed a residential street lined with sycamore trees, and Claire saw an older woman struggling with 2 overloaded grocery bags near the curb. Without thinking, she stepped forward. Let me help you. The woman looked up. Late 70s, silver hair pinned back, lined face, clear eyes. She gave Claire a small, tired smile. Well, thank God, she said. I was beginning to think these oranges were going to defeat me. Her name was Ruth Whitmore. She lived alone in a modest white house with blue shutters and a garden that looked lovingly neglected rather than abandoned. She invited Claire and Mason in for iced tea and sandwiches. Claire meant to refuse, but her body had already run out of strength, and there was something in Ruth's voice that felt safe. In a way Claire did not have the energy to question. The house smelled like lemon polish and old books. Mason fell quiet in the living room, staring at framed photographs on the mantel. Ruth took one look at Claire's face and said, "Who broke your heart?" And that was all it took. Claire cried harder than she had in years. She told her everything. The classes, the work, the ceremony, the blonde, the sentence about not being able to stay tied to her life. When she finished, Mason was half asleep against her side. Ruth folded her hands and asked the only question that mattered. "Where are you sleeping tonight?" Claire looked down. "I don't know." Ruth nodded once, as if some private decision had just become simple. "There's a room upstairs," she said. "You and the boy can stay there until you do know." Claire shook her head. "You don't even know me." "No," Ruth said. "But I know enough. I know what it looks like when a woman has been carrying too much by herself for too long." They stayed the night. Then another, then enough nights that it stopped being temporary. Ruth had been a bookkeeper before retiring. Her husband had died years earlier. Her only daughter lived in Oregon and called often but visited rarely. The house had become too quiet for one person. Claire helped with groceries, laundry, meals, and 1,000 small tasks that pile up in a home when time keeps moving but energy doesn't. Mason took to Ruth immediately. Within weeks, he was calling her Grandma Ruth without anyone ever suggesting it. And Claire, for the first time in years, had room to think beyond survival. The money she had once poured into rent and Lucas's schooling now had another use. One evening, sitting at Ruth's kitchen table, she found herself staring at the website of a community college in a 2-year program in operations and business management. Evening classes. Transfer options. Ruth noticed. "Well," she asked. Claire stared at the screen. "I'm thinking it's too late." Ruth snorted. "Late compared to what? Dead?" Claire laughed in spite of herself. That was how it began. "Se embroille. At work at bidet, studied by night. Came home to Ruth helping Mason with spelling at the kitchen table. The first semester nearly broke her. She failed one exam, cried in the bathroom at school, came home convinced Lucas had been right. Ruth listened, then slid a cup of tea toward her. "I learned how to use a computer at 58, she said, "and I hated every second of it. Still learned." "That's not the same." "No," Ruth agreed. "Yours matters more, so you don't quit." Claire didn't. 2 years became 4. She transferred, finished her degree, and kept going. Mesa grew. Ruth's hair thinned. The house became home in all the ways that count. At Claire's graduation, Mesa, now 11, stood and shouted, "That's my mom." So loudly, people around him laughed and started clapping with him. Ruth cried into a handkerchief and pretended not to. Claire found work first as a scheduling assistant at a regional logistics company in Brookdale. Then team lead. Then department supervisor. She had something Lucas had never understood. She knew how to build from the ground up because she had spent half her life doing exactly that. Over the years, she rose quietly and steadily until the day she became director of operations for the entire Midwest branch. The same week, Ruth's doctor told them her heart was getting weaker. Claire sat beside her that evening and read the promotion letter aloud. Ruth smiled without surprise. About time. Years later, a hiring vacancy opened in Claire's department. Dozens of applications came in. She was halfway through them when she saw the name, Lucas Halle. She read the resume twice. Accounting background. Several years of unstable work history. 2 recent layoffs. Good references from people who probably never knew the whole story. She left the application in the interview pile. He walked into the room the next day expecting a normal meeting. When he saw her, he stopped cold. Claire did not. "Mr. Halle," she said evenly, "please, have a seat." The interview lasted 30 minutes. She asked the same questions she asked everyone else. He answered carefully, professionally, but she could see the strain beneath the surface. At the end, when the formal part was over and the HR manager stepped out, Lucas looked at her and asked the one question he could not hold back. How did you get here? Claire thought of Ruth, of Mason, of late nights studying at a scarred kitchen table, of every time she had chosen the next hard step instead of collapse. By doing what you did, she said, only without anyone carrying me. It looked down. I ruined everything, he said quietly. Claire did not rush to comfort him. Yes, she said. It was not vengeance, it was simply true. He swallowed hard. How's Mason? He's 17, Claire said. He wants to study engineering. Something painful passed over Lucas's face. I'm glad, he said. When HR returned, Claire stood and shook his hand. We'll be in touch. After he left, she stood by the window and looked over the parking lot for a long time. She did not feel triumph. She felt something better. Peace. The kind that comes when your life no longer needs the approval of the person who once failed to see its worth. That evening she went home to Ruth, now slower but still sharp, and Mason, now tall enough to reach the top shelf without a stool. How'd it go? Ruth asked. Claire smiled faintly. I offered him professionalism. Nothing more. Ruth nodded. Good. That costs less than revenge. And sitting there in that kitchen, with the woman who had opened her door at the right moment and the boy who had given her a reason to keep going, Claire understood something. Life had been teaching her all along. The people who betray you do not always destroy your future. Sometimes they only clear the path for the people who were meant to help you build it. If Claire's story stayed with you, if Ruth's kindness or Claire's strength moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, do you believe some people only understand your worth when it's already too late?